Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The New Norm with Selena Hill, sponsored by Cadillac on Black Enterprise. This is the place where we take a deep dive into the lives, careers, and journeys of notable leaders making impact in their respective fields and the world at large. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Derrick Johnson, the president and CEO of the NAACP. Mr. Johnson, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Johnson, before we talk about the upcoming NAACP Image Awards, which I'm super excited about, I want to get your thoughts on President Biden's State of the Union speech. Did his remarks on police reform go far enough to address the crisis of police violence against the Black community?
Well, his remarks are what they were. The real issue with police reform is an issue for Congress to take up. The president has already adopted an executive order, but public policy, federal public policy, must be done through an act of Congress. During the last Congress, the House of Representatives did what was necessary, and it was stalled by the Senate. During this session, the Senate will have the votes to move the conversation and really adopt public policy. But I am concerned that the House of Representatives, under the current leadership, would not be able to get the votes necessary to pass police reform. So we're going to be in this holding pattern for at least another 2 years until the 2024 election. And I hope African Americans turn out in record numbers so that we can have control of both bodies of Congress and to ensure public policy to provide protection for our communities and police reform.
But Mr. Johnson, I mean, if we just think back to, Tyree Nichols, who was murdered just a few weeks ago, does the Black community really have 2 years to wait on Congress to take action?
Well, we would have said that we have 2 years after George Floyd. Have we had 2 years after Emmett Till? Have we had? I mean, this is nothing new. It is unfortunate. We're able to document it now because of smartphones and cameras on poles and police cameras. The reality is what the reality is. Until we have a Congress who will have the political will to adopt police reform, we're going to be stuck in this holding pattern. And unfortunately, there will be other individuals harmed in our community at the hands of police officers who should not be wearing a badge.
Mr. Johnson, when we think about the reform that we're calling for, of course, you mentioned the George Floyd Policing Act is something that's being held up in Congress right now. But what do you say to advocates and activists that say there's no amount of training or reform that will stop police from murdering and killing other people, which happen to be which disproportionately affects the Black community? What do you say to those who are calling for a more radical transformation and calling for us to finally reimagine public safety in a way that supports and protects Black people?
So, first of all, no one wants to be protected more than the Black community. We want to be able to have safe communities that where our elders can feel comfortable walking down the street, our young people can enjoy their youth. And so the question of policing isn't one of which there's no amount of training that can take place, because I reject that notion. We see this happening in this country. We don't see this type of police violence against community in Canada or in Australia or in London. We have a culture of over policing. While at the exact same time, we also need to look at some of the root issues here. We're demanding police officers to do the job that mental health professionals should be doing. We have gutted budgets that would have provided recreational activities for young people and community activities for low wealth areas. But more importantly, we have not addressed community-based trauma or home-based trauma. We try to police it, and there's no amount of policing you can do for that. But the radical approaches have to make sense. It has to be based in fact, not emotion. And no other community want to be safer than a Black community. And I appreciate good police officers. We all know them. Some of them are in our families. What we don't want are bad police officers. So we have to screen individuals who go into the professions. We have to pay police officers a real living wage so they can actually have a quality of life. There's so many things that must happen. And so the radical conversations oftentimes are armchair revolutionaries talking about a revolution that they're not even on the front lines for. We need to talk about what is working, what has worked, and how do we proceed with public policy that we can adopt.
Mr. Johnson, to your point about not relying so much on police officers to answer calls when it comes to mental health illnesses, and other things that may just frankly be beyond their training. Is it time to defund police officers and put that funding towards more people who can help those who are in a medical health crisis, those who need a different type of um, help or assistance that does not involve or should not involve someone pulling up who is armed with a gun?
Well, we should be talking about how do we right size the approach to promote, create, and maintain healthy communities. And to do that, there's no silver bullet, and there are many things that we should be looking at, some of which I just mentioned: after school programs, recreational opportunities, mental health services, social workers to address community trauma, because some communities are living in trauma. It's all of those things. There's no one thing, and we should not create these false equivalencies between defunding one thing to fund something else. We need to fund all those things, right size expectations, provide the necessary trainings, and we actually, the outcomes we get is what we measure, and measure the impact over time. It is no secret how to create healthy communities. We just have to have the political will to make it happen.
Speaking of political will, again, just to take it back to the State of the Union address, we know that the parents of Tyree Nichols were there present in the First Lady's box. What did that? What was the significance behind having Tyree Nichols' parents there at the State of the Union?
Well, it's significant because it continues to highlight the need for police reform. It humanizes Tyree to say this is a human being with parents who loved him, that he was going home to have dinner with, that this is not a criminal. This is not someone who's drug addicted. This is not some deadbeat personality. This is a human being who came from a family who loved to embrace them. And he was literally going home to have dinner with his parents. So it's important to always keep that image front of mind, not only for our community, but for the nation. And as the president make a priority for police reform, for that to happen, Congress must act. It is a matter of public policy that has to be adopted by the House and the Senate for the president to sign. The president cannot do it all alone.
Absolutely. And Mr. Johnson, just to switch gears on a positive, lighter note, we know that the NAACP, in addition to the advocacy that you guys put forward when it comes to police reform, voting rights, etc., you guys also celebrate the Black community and those who exemplify Black excellence, and that culminates with the annual NAACP Image Awards. So I wanted to spend some time talking about this upcoming award show and why it's so important for you and your organization to continue to uplift those who exemplify Black excellence.
Right. Thank you for the question. So this will be the 54th annual NAACP Image Awards, February 25th. It is really important for our community to lift up and celebrate the achievements of the arts and entertainment of people from our community. If we don't celebrate ourselves, who else will? But more importantly, African Americans have defined the culture for this nation. And so we must talk about the contributions that we make. We must make sure that our artists and our entertainers recognize that we appreciate them and we celebrate them. The Image Awards is significant for not only NAACP, but for Black America. Public policy is driven by the images that are shown on the screen. How we are viewed on screens or how we are treated in public policy and in the streets. And so as much as possible, we present the best in class from our community and the arts that they have developed, whether it's Black Panther or the Woman King. If you ain't seen the Woman King, go see it, or all of the pieces of art in between. We must celebrate ourselves because we have contributed so much, and we must continue to contribute for the culture, not only in the Black community but for the globe.
When you talk about the importance of celebrating ourselves, and you mentioned the Woman King, the director of the Woman King actually is speaking out because the Woman King and so many other Black oriented films have not been nominated for the Academy Awards this year. And this is just a reoccurring pattern where we see great films, great pieces of art, great songs, continually snubbed by these other institutions. What do you say to those who feel neglected or overlooked from these institutions, but in contrast to what the NAACP is doing?
Well, first of all, we must start from a frame of us celebrating us validating us, and us appreciating the value and artistic direction that we're seeing with all of these new creators. For the Image Awards, we have to create more categories because we have more individuals from our community who are operating behind the scenes in the digital space, in the literary categories. And so it's about us celebrating us. And if other institutions decide not to do so, that's on them. Our focus at NAACP is how do we continue to highlight the positive images to show the unique and the diverse and the dynamic nature of who we are as a people as we impact the culture globally. And so for those other entities that have snubbed and not recognized the contributions, shame on them. Before the NAACP, for the Black community, we have a platform. And that's why I invite people to tune in to watch the Image Awards show because it is about us celebrating us and lifting up the greatness that we bring to the table.
Absolutely. And I had a chance to actually attend in person a few years ago. It is a remarkable celebration for us and by us. Mr. Johnson, what are you looking forward to the most this year?
Well, coming back together after 2 year hiatus as a result of the pandemic, having that level of Black excellence in the room and watching everyone embrace and celebrate each other collectively. It's the thing that makes us a beautiful culture is how we celebrate one another collectively. So I'm looking forward to the energy of that room.
Absolutely. And can we also talk about are there any surprises or any big stars that we could expect to see at this year's Image Awards?
Unfortunately, I can't reveal, but I'm excited with the lineup and all the individuals who have already confirmed to be there. If I begin to say who's going to be there outside of our staff, they would chase me down the street. So just tune in February 25th. Stay tuned to the press clippings about all the individuals. I'm excited that we're going to honor and celebrate Chairman Benny Thompson for the work he did with the January 6th committee. We're going to highlight and celebrate the advocacy of a Ben Crump, how he's continued the drumbeat to uplift police reform. And there are several others that's going to be getting special awards that I cannot announce now, but you will be pleased, so tune in.
Thank you again, Mr. Johnson, for all the work and the advocacy that you guys are doing at the NAACP. And like he said, be sure to tune in to the NAACP Image Awards February 25th. I believe it is broadcasting on BET this year.
Broadcasting on BET and CBS, so tune in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.